Welcome back, class. We're going to finish up with this third segment. It may not be as long as the first two segments, but we're talking about just how to deal uh, with resistance to change. And I'm not sure there is a one size fits all. I've tried multiple approaches dealing with resistance. Um, tried positive, tried negative, somewhere in the middle. Uh, you know, convince some followers to, help bring people along. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on context. It all depends on the type of team you've got. Some teams function more efficiently in a constantly changing organization. Some don't work well at all with change. So I'm not sure there is a formula for dealing with resistance to change. It's, my approach has always been, it's, kind of like, trial and error. You try something, it doesn't work, you back up and you try something else. And there have been times in the past that have to implement a change that has been handed down from above somewhere. And I've had to suggest to individuals that maybe there's other areas in the company that'd be more at ease working in or happier working in. And I've always approached it as, if there's somewhere else in the company you want to work, just let me know, and I'll do everything I can to get you shifted over into that other area of the country, so or other area of the company. So, and I've had a couple of occasions where the individual just said, it's just not going to work. I'm just leaving. And, you hate to see that, especially. A couple of these individuals have been individuals I invested a lot of time and effort in developing their human capital, and I knew they were going to be successful at another health plan, but it was their decision to leave. And we talked about in one of the early chapters about alienated individuals or alienated followers, and sometimes it is better for them to leave a country and go to a company and go to work for maybe even a competitor in the same city. But at the end of the day, I think as a leader, as long as you want everybody to be happy, I think the decision is what's going to be right for however they decide to head in which direction. Resistance to change is a normal and inevitable part of an organizational transformation. Again, mentioned it multiple times. If historically successful, the employee will question the need for a change. And again, we've talked about that in the other segments here. The inertia protects us from bad ideas and allows for the stability required to manage large, complex organizations. And it's everybody wants stability. They're trying to reach that stability that's going to ensure a successful work environment and a successful work life, but sometimes change turns all of that upside down. Changing technologies, environments within the market requires change, and it's leaders' responsibility to manage the change process, overcoming resistance. Again, if you're in a leadership position, it's gonna fall to you. It's up to you as a leader to be able to manage and navigate the changing environment and how you manage the resistance to change. Leaders can do all of the right things, follow all the right steps, and still fail if they don't manage resistance. And they gave an example in the text about a bank. The bank manager did everything in his power, followed all the steps, followed either the 3 steps or Kotter's 8 steps, and it didn't matter. He didn't manage the resistance. And if you don't manage that resistance, it's going to be extremely difficult to be successful. Understand whose cooperation is critical and who can derail the effort. And as a leader, you've got to have that. You've got to know that as much of that information up front as possible, but you'll pick up some additional information as you're starting to go through the change process. And I've had instances where I've identified individuals that's going to be receptive to change, and turns out they are the most resistant to change. It's You pick up key pieces of information as you go through the process, and the change process it's just not a perfect it's just not a perfect process, and you as a leader are going to have to be flexible and be able to manage that process as you go forward. Leaders need to understand that resistance is normal and can even be healthy if information, different perspectives are missing. And there's where they try to tie it back to groupthink. You don't want, change in a groupthink environment is probably somewhat easy, especially, but and again, there have been times that I've tried to implement change, and you had a bunch of kind of embedded in groupthink, and I've actually put individuals on the transformation team that I knew were going to cause problems, because what they did is they came up with some of the ideas were wacky, but they came up with some ideas and they challenged the status quo, and it actually ended up we had a more successful change process than we would have had otherwise. If the decision to change has been made, and if resistance can't be converted, leaders must minimize the impact of eliminating the threat before it's too late. And that's where you may have to, as a leader, take individuals aside and say, look, especially if it's handed down from, above somewhere, say, look, this is the hand we're dealt. This change has to be implemented. And, it's either, you're either are on board and you're not on board. And if you're not on board, that's great. If you're not on board, you need to tell me what it is I can do to help you understand why you need to be on board. And at the end of that, if you can't get on board, we'll have to find somewhere else in the company for you to work. Rule of thumb for change, then they call it the 1/3 rule, and it's pretty accurate, at least from my experience. The 1/3 rule is pretty accurate. You have a third buy-in because they like change or they trust the leader. I've had individuals in the past that love change. They were unhappy if we weren't changing something. They thrived on changing processes and changing procedures, and that's what drove them. That was the incentive that they loved to come to work. And then you have some individuals that, and we've talked about them in earlier chapters, they kind of go with the flow. Okay, that's what the leader wants. Let's just do it. You have a third that will be skeptical and wait for evidence that the change is serious and can yield good results. So, you've got a third that are going to jump right in there. You got a third that's going to kind of sit back and wait to see how things work. And then you got a third that's going to be resistant regardless. Doesn't matter what the communication is, doesn't matter what the rationale is. They just don't like change. They're just not change agents, and they don't like change. You've got some, and in that middle group, they refer to them in the text as fence setters. And fence setters, an employee in a change process who are skeptical and wait for evidence that the change effort is serious and can yield good results. And you always have fence setters. You have fence setters in an organization when you're not even talking about change. You just have people that sit around and watch and just decide they're not going to make a decision on what to do or how to do it until they see somebody else, make the decision to move forward. We had a cafeteria in the building in Buffalo, and you could go in there to get, food was decent, and you would go in and you would see people standing and looking around, and it was almost like they couldn't make a decision on what they wanted for lunch or breakfast until they saw somebody else getting something, and then they would kind of gravitate over there and get the same thing. So you're always going to have fence setters. If the first 2/3 fall in line, then the last third can go along or be left behind. That's your only decision. If you've got a third, and you get the first 2/3 kind of on board, then that final third, it's kind of a binary decision at that point. Go along or be left behind. And you'll have a lot of people that don't like to be left behind, and they'll move over, but you'll have some that don't care. They will constantly be resistant to change. The middle third They talk about implement some of the steps in the 8th step, and the fence setters will tend to be pushed to supportive category. Ensure rewards are aligned. Give the and talk about giving them a voice in the process, and that's extremely important on some of these. And it's not just the middle third; it's you want to give everybody a voice and how the process is structured and how it's going to move forward. You don't have to take their voice, and you don't have to incorporate it, but at least listen to what they had to say. And again, there have been situations where I've opened it up to the group to see what they thought, and there'll be some ideas thrown against the wall, and you think, what about that? And you'll go home and you think about it for a day or two, and you say, that actually might work. So you never know what kind of ideas you're going to get if you open it up to the group to voice. The bottom third poses a serious challenge. And they talk about, and that, that's obvious, but they talk about bad and worse. Bad may stay quiet. They may not support the change, but they will not undermine it. So that's the bad. The worse, they're the true resistors. Employees in the change process who actively or passive aggressively attempt to undermine the change efforts, and they'll try to undermine it at every step. And those individuals that are going to undermine it with every step, so the bad, they will live with the change or they'll leave the company. You'll have the worst that, you're going to have to deal with as a leader. And either you're going to have to deal with them directly or they need to be terminated. So those are some extremely unpleasant discussions to have. I've had them, didn't like to have them, but they were part of the change process. And as a leader, you're going to have to get a little, thick-skinned on some of this, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions, not only for you and your team, but for the individuals that you're trying to move out to another position somewhere. That's going to finish up that chapter 13, and we'll get together again soon. Thank you.